Hello there, Lunar Squadron, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another Star Wars Outlaws video. As you may know, Nick and I have been away this past week playing Star Wars Outlaws early, all thanks to our friends over at Ubisoft, and while we can't share our impressions just quite yet, we will be updating all of you on the news that has released in the past week, including this very interesting article out of IGN about the open world of Star Wars Outlaws, or shall I say the open worlds of Star Wars Outlaws, and I can't wait to dig into this one because there are some really interesting details here. But first, if you're new to the channel, we would love to have you, and the way to do that is go down below this video, click the little subscribe button, and make sure to hit the bell notification button right on next to it. It's going to let you know every single time that Nick and I upload the latest and greatest Star Wars Outlaws videos here on YouTube. And for more things Star Wars Outlaws and more things Lunar Squadron, follow us at Lunar Squadron on Twitter. That said, Nick, ready to get into this one?
Oh, I'm always ready to talk about this game.
All right, let's do this, guys. This article is out of IGN. It is titled, "Some Star Wars Outlaws planets can be crossed in 4 or 5 minutes on a speeder," with a subtitle of "Now This is Pod Racing." Article is written by Ryan Dinsdale over at IGN. Nick, why don't you kick us off with this one?
Yeah, so for those of you who do not know or were not aware, Star Wars Outlaws will be featured as a part of IGN first over the next month, so we will be getting a ton of information about this game over the next handful of weeks, including all of the articles that they dropped over the past few days while we were gone playing Star Wars Outlaws. It was really hard to try and keep up with everything, but here we are. We're going to try and start getting updated on everything and breaking everything down. And like Andrea said, we are going to be starting with some of these brand new open world details. And where I want to start off first is this paragraph where it says, speaking to IGN as part of a larger interview, creative director Julian Gerighty reiterated the planets Tatooine, a Toshara moon, Akiva, Kijimi, and Kanto will be around the size of 2 or 3 zones in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Of course, this is something that they have been talking about for almost a year now, comparing the size of the maps in this game to that of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, just trying to give people a frame of reference for what to expect when this game releases. But then Julian goes on to say that Toshara is very close in size to Akiva and Tatooine. I think Tatooine may be a little bit larger. And then it continues with, when then asked how long it would take protagonist Kay Vess to ride from one end of Toshara to the other side of her speeder, Gerighty gave the 4 or 5 minute answer, which will seemingly apply to Akiva and Tatooine too, since they're around the same size. So, Andreas, we learned a lot of very interesting things here. We learn that Toshara, Akiva, and Tatooine are going to be roughly the same size, and we learn it will take roughly 4 to 5 minutes to get across them from one point to the other. And very interesting, and it sounds like Tatooine might be the largest planet in this game, and given the gameplay footage that we saw at Ubisoft Forward, I don't think this surprises either of us, right?
No, it really doesn't, because at least from what we've seen out of Tatooine so far with the gameplay demonstration that we got at Summer Game Fest, that Tatooine map looks pretty large. Just like, look at this gameplay here, guys. Like, look how vast the Dune Sea looks, and we've seen Mos Eisley, and that looks pretty substantial as well. So I'm really not shocked to see that. And then, of course, we've seen a ton of Toshara thus far, and Toshara does look just as expansive. Nick, it's really interesting to see Akiva thrown around in the same sentence here, because I feel like thus far in the social media coverage for Star Wars Outlaws, Ubisoft's kind of played Akiva a bit close to the vest. Like, we've seen a couple of shots of Akiva here and there, a couple rainforest shots here, jungle shots there, Kay riding her speeder over the water, but not much about this planet. So it feels like there is a great unknown that we haven't seen, which I love to hear. And Nick, directing to the exact quote about 4 or 5 minutes here, it says, quote, 4 or 5 minutes non-stop, which doesn't sound like a lot, but once you're committed, it's a fairly large amount, and you're always going to be distracted, end quote. Nick, I think it's a helpful frame of reference for people. A lot of you have probably played GTA 5, and in my latest attempt, driving from one side of the GTA 5 Los Santos map all the way to the other at its longest point from A to Z, it took me about 7.5 minutes in a fast car. Of course, they're also measuring on a speeder. Nick, given that comparison, I mean, a lot of people look at GTA 5 as a yardstick for an expansive open world. How do we feel about this 4 or 5 minute measure for these planets?
Yeah, that's a great point, is comparing it to GTA. And we've seen a lot of people on social media be like, well, the GTA map is 7 minutes to get across, and this planet is only 4 to 5 minutes. But what I think a lot of people are forgetting is it's not just one map in this game. We are talking about 5 locations. So if you add all of that up, in terms of total surface area, it's going to be significantly larger in totality than what we got in GTA 5. And GTA 5 has sustained people for over a decade now. So we are talking about a lot of surface area to get across. And of course, Star Wars Outlaws is all about the quality and not the quantity. That is something that Julian Gerighty and his team have stressed, and they stress again in this interview, is they wanted to pack these locations with stuff for people to do. If it's big but empty, what is the point, right? And one thing that I do want to go back to that you mentioned that I'm also really surprised about is seeing that Akiva being mentioned as around the same size as Tatooine and Toshara, because I think going into this game, I was expecting Toshara, since it was an original planet, to be one of the bigger, if not the biggest planet, and Tatooine, you know, the original hive of scum and villainy, to also be one of the biggest planets, because it is also one of the most flushed out planets in all of Star Wars. So I was expecting that one to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest also. So to see that Akiva will also be similar in size gets me really excited, because that is one of those planets that we know about, but we have never really seen in live action or any sort of way in the Star Wars universe. So it's going to be incredibly exciting to see what Lucasfilm and Massive together have come up with for this planet that has already been established within the Star Wars lore. That is really exciting. And then IGN kind of speculates here where it says it's unclear if the remaining 2 planets, Kijimi and Kanto, are larger or smaller than these. I don't see a way, personally, Andreas, that either of these 2 planets could be bigger than the other 3, just because if you take what we know about these planets and what we've seen in the live action when it comes to Star Wars and just where the locations have been focused at with these planets, it's been Kijimi City on Kijimi and Canto Bight on Kanto. Like, we don't know really of any of other locations on these planets. So I have always been expecting those planets to just be focused on those 2 main well-known locations. So I expect those 2 to be the smaller planets when it comes to these. But to hear that Akiva will also be just as big, really exciting, and honestly makes it bigger, this game bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and on that note, Nick, about Kanto and Kijimi, I feel like what I'm personally looking for out of those locations isn't really the size of the map. Because when I'm thinking of Canto Bight, I want a dense Canto Bight with a lot of things to do. I want to play in the casinos. I want to, like, do the whole thing in Canto Bight. And the same goes for Kijimi City. Like, I'm not looking for the same experience that I would be expecting out of Tatooine, because when I think of Tatooine, I'm thinking of, I want to ride my speeder bike across the Dune Sea with the twin suns setting in the background. That's the experience that I want out of Tatooine. I don't exactly look at Kijimi and Kanto and think that that's the experience I need. So personally, I'm liking this message of density and quality over quantity, because I also want to draw all of our attention to a similar planet-to-planet exploration game that a lot of people have been comparing Star Wars Outlaws to, and that is Starfield. Nick and I both love Starfield, but there is a bit of a shallow nature to a lot of the open universe exploration for that game, where it does feel like it is a mile wide but an inch deep, and I am looking forward to a more deep exploratory area. I'm looking for more depth in the maps and locations out of this game. That's personally what I'm looking for. So I just hope that they've struck that balance for each location so that it really does feel like there's a lot to do in these areas like Mos Eisley. I want that to feel like a deep experience, but then areas like the Dune Sea, I want to feel expansive. So I'm hoping they really strike that balance. And I just, again, looking at somewhere like GTA 5, I think the GTA 5 map was well balanced, where you had a very dense Los Santos area, and then the more open outside areas were nice to traverse. But again, you had that variety there. And just looking at this catalog of planets, I do think there's a fair amount of variety in the biomes that are being offered. You have the jungles of Akiva, the dunes of Tatooine, you have the snowy environment on Kijimi. I do think that they've maybe paid some attention to the different variety and have tried to put forth that variety. So I'm hoping that they strike that balance. And Nick, one thing we haven't even talked about is there's all of this space around planets as well. We've seen some space gameplay thus far, and the space looks pretty expansive. We've seen gameplay of K on an Imperial base, and that looked like a pretty expansive Imperial base as well. So I just am having trouble wrapping my head around how big this experience is about to be.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point about Starfield. I mean, who cares how many procedurally generated planets there are if they're all empty and there's nothing to do on them? Like, who cares if there's 1,000 of them if they're boring? Like, that doesn't matter. What matters is what you can do in this open space, and I think that's one thing that I really love about what Massive is doing with this game, and it's a philosophy that I buy in on, is that it is quality over quantity. And this quote right here is what I love, is where he says, so we don't want things to be just big for big's sake. We need it to be contained, always fun, always proposing different activities. So the traversal of the whole thing had to feel like a journey, a commitment when you get on your speeder and you want to go from one end to the next. I love that quote because that is exactly what I want when it comes to open world games. I've never really cared about the size of the map. I just want an open world game, like a map in an open world game, to be dense and full of things to do. That's the stuff I care about, and that's what separates open world games for me from other ones. Bad ones from good ones from great ones, and great ones from some of the best of all time is what can I do in this open world? I don't care if it takes me 10 years to cross it if there's nothing to do. That's not what I'm looking for. Surface area doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. So, guys, let us know your thoughts down below on all of these brand new details for the open world when it comes to Star Wars Outlaws. We've got a lot of great new context. We've learned roughly that 3 of the planets are going to be about the same size, and then, of course, Kijimi and Kanto are out there, but I think we can all reasonably expect them to be a little bit smaller. And now we know about how long it will take us to cross each of these planets, or at least those 3 ones that will be the biggest locations in this game. So just let us know your thoughts. Is that enough for you? Do you wish they were bigger? Do you somehow wish they were smaller? Do you care more about the quality or quantity when it comes to the activities in the open world? We love just hearing people's different thoughts on when it comes to what they like to see in open worlds, because I think everybody has a different expectation and opinion when it comes to what makes a great open world experience, and it definitely looks like Massive is trying to strike some sort of balance when it comes to Star Wars Outlaws. So definitely let us know all of your thoughts down below. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for us for this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, we will see you all next time.